Right. Okay, so discussion about Daily Oracle using today's early edition as a base discussion point. I try and keep this to 2 pages. I usually do. The various sections of the Oracle, I mean, they're fairly obvious. Earnings, I try and cover the earnings that came out the previous day, the earnings that come out this morning, and then there's a note to say what earnings are going to be coming out this evening. It is the estimates and the actuals, either which is put up on Benzinga, Trade the News, Earnings Whispers, or FactSet, or there's a few other places where you get the estimates. The short float position is taken purely from the trading terminal. In terms of announcements, the vast majority of times the announcements are only there really to look at the time. So if at 10:30 this morning we suddenly see a spike going through the SPY, we know that probably the Dallas Fed has come through and done something interesting. So you can jump onto your news channels and see what it's actually done. And you're looking for what the actual versus the estimate has done, typically with the impact on the interest rates. Expected ranges are based off the weekly options chain to look at the plus minus. Jared's sessions typically cover this for the SPY, well, not so much for the SPY, but for the S&P 500 itself. And this is taking the sort of the major ones that a lot of people are trading, just to give them an expectation of what the maximum prices are likely to be for the year, so for the week ahead, based on the close of last week, plus or minus the options pricing for the next month. Market commentary is, I mean, it tries to set the theme about where the markets are opening for the day ahead. That's a combination of stuff from the street, from Reuters, and a variety of other sources that I've slowly worked through. And again, trying to keep it cut down to be as relevant as possible without using too much space. I'm going to jump the next 3 sections and go straight to and finally. This is more stuff which I find interesting. I'll regularly put up a little article if I haven't got space to put on some of these things, and rarely it's a cartoon, but it's more stuff that is going on around the market where it's just like, oh, that's interesting. So it might be the dynamics about how pricing, if it goes beyond 20% in the pre-market, that there's a series of rules which mean that some of the trades might get disqualified. So it's just sort of rounding out our education as traders, which hopefully is useful for people. Where this starts getting interesting, I'm going to work backwards now. So broker reports, when I put up the article earlier today, there were none that were showing. I only include it where there has been a change in rating. If it's a change in the price target, there's too many of them, and if realistically it makes no difference in terms of the actual tradability. So in the 3 minutes between starting this and loading of the early report, AstraZeneca got an upgrade from Argus Research from hold to buy, and they set a price target at 75. That could be an interesting story. I have very rarely seen broker reports actually materially move the price without another story on the same day, but it does happen, so that's the reason why it's there. The meat of this is the stock news. So I start doing this at about 4:30 in the morning New York time. It's 9:30 here, so it's not quite so bad. And basically, I'm just looking for any news on any of the 178 tickers that we've got on the master list at the moment. I don't try and decide whether it's going to be relevant or not. If it's Elon Musk saying something about the fact that the twins were done through in vitro fertilization and it comes up as Tesla and Benzinga, I'm not going to include that. It's not relevant to Tesla. So there is a little bit of editing going in about what's going there, but I'm trying to just put in stuff that might move the market. I'm going to circle back to that comment because that's really the meat of it, that we're looking for stuff that's going to move the market. Other news is there specifically to say, okay, these are things that could be really, really interesting today. They are very relevant to what we do as traders, but it hasn't appeared in any other section. So I find that my most interesting watch list typically comes out of other news because I'm looking for stuff that the market has not reacted to in the pre-market. So, for instance, today we've got California Governor Newsom plans to keep the state's last nuclear plant open and transition away from fossil fuel. That's shouting to me that nuclear could be interesting today. The Wall Street Journal said the West has begun to muster the money and political support to keep decades-old nuclear reactors from shutting down. That says to me that nuclear is going to be in the market today. There's a series of comments about oil and gas. Okay, so we've got energy that is looking like it could be a real interesting story today. As I jump over to the specific stock news, the only energy stock that is talking there is ExxonMobil selling 5,000 natural gas wells, no financial terms. Okay, that's looking interesting. As I look at DAS right now, XOM has had 17,000 shares traded. That makes me even more excited because it means the price hasn't moved on any of that news yet. So I will probably have XOM and CCJ, Cameco, the uranium miner. They will probably going onto my watch list for later to see how things evolve. Um, the other stories that are probably in there is obviously China and the Chinese regulatory matter easing up and Chinese industrial firms. We have had PDD make an announcement today of their earnings, so PDD could be interesting, but PDD right now has already traded almost 2 million shares. That takes it off my list because it has already popped. Where it will go thereafter, I don't know. So that's the way I'm looking at other news there. It's what underlying is going on and how could I trade some of this stuff based on what's generically going on. Um, I'm not going to talk about any of the specific stock news items because I'd rather open it up to questions if people have got any. If there aren't any questions, then I'll just sort of slowly work my way through each of those ones and sort of comment about why I think it's relevant or why I don't think it's relevant. So have we got any questions as yet?
Yeah, what's the difference between stock news and broker reports?
Broker reports, I've separated all the broker reports out into that section, so I'm not mixing the broker reports into the other stock news. So the broker reports is just there to say this person's changed it from a neutral to a sell or a sell to a buy. Because I found over the past 6 months of doing this that it rarely moves the price and it mixes too much up into the stock news section.
Ah, okay, I got it. And
The
where do you get the news from? From is it from Benzinga only?
Okay, so I Benzinga, I review everything that's on Trading News on Trading Terminal. Then I go to what do I do after that? Then I've got a system called Newswatch from a company called Newsware, where I've loaded up all the tickers into that, and I go through all of that. So that's probably about 500 news items that I go through that. Then I go to Stock Twits, Earnings Whispers, Hargreaves Lansdown, and IG to look at their emails from overnight. Then I go to Twitter and review everything that's in there for about the past 5 hours. So that covers Bloomberg's, Reuters, Wall Street Journal, a variety of other sources which I have a permanent watch on. Then I go to what's after that one? Then I go to Reuters and the Street to lift out the market commentary news. So yeah, I mean, typically I'm reviewing about 1,000 tweets, 500 newspaper articles, the whole of Benzinga, and 7 or 8 emails and 2 websites.
Wow. And how long does it take to make this all?
I start at 9:30 in the morning, and I publish the first one at 12:15. So what's that? 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Okay.
But I mean, I find this fascinating. I've always loved searching for information and finding the little nuances here and there, and it helps. I hope everyone in the community to be able to just say, look, if I need to catch up quickly, I've got a two-pager that pulls everything together. I don't cover some tickers because it's not on the major list. So BBBY is off the list at the moment. There will not be an alert on it. So the list of tickers that I follow is the same as the list that Gazoo uses. And so if you've read the Oracle and an article comes, sorry, an alert comes up, you go, oh, hold on, it's popping, and there was some news on that, and that makes me more excited because I know more of what's going on.
Okay, perfect. And
Um,
I got one final question, but I think that's better after you go through the stock news.
okay,
Um, because yeah, I wanted to ask you if you're looking for specific keywords. Um,
I'll
but
circle back.
maybe that's
Yeah, I'll circle back to that one.
yeah.
Um,
Okay.
okay, so in terms of the stock news today, we've got Apple Justice Department antitrust. Okay, well, if that goes through, then that's not good for Apple. That's going to hit their revenues. That's going to be bad for them. Apple's looking like a short on that news. Abbott Laboratories restarted Similac infant formula. That's good for them because the revenue starts moving up. Cleveland Cliffs labor deal that sorts out the possibility of revenue stopping because they're not going to go on strike, and it's going to lock in costs. That's good. Disney 4-year deal to air global cricket. I mean, as an American, what the hell's cricket? In India, it's huge. So the fact that they've lost the India Premier League cricket, that was bad. So the fact they've got the ability to project stuff to India, that's good. GE, Sahar Aluminium, okay, aluminium smelter, 10-year, boring. Google, open doors to develop stuff. That's probably good for revenue, but for the size of Google, not particularly exciting. Li Auto delaying delivery. Ooh, power shortages, Sichuan. That's the droughts production. Yeah, that's not good. However, the L9 as a proportion of the overall company is relatively small. That's not a good story. Also, China has got droughts, so that might drive other companies. They have got floods inbound at the moment. That the drought is about to disappear. I'm not sure if you all saw the floods in Pakistan. That will reach China relatively quickly. Meta settling Cambridge Analytica. Nothing on how much that's going to be. Launching something with geo platforms. Bit of something and nothing stories. I mean, that might go onto the list if I haven't got anything else. MMM, 3M. Yeah, that's nasty. But then, so they've lost 10 out of 16 cases so far. There is another 230,000. Oh shit. 230,000 cases. They've lost 265 million on 10, and they've got a lot more lawsuits, and they've only set a billion to one side. Yeah, they're fucked. Oh, hold on. On Friday, their share price went down by 10%. That's probably already priced in. That might be a follow on story, but probably not. QCon, antitrust regulators. So the $900 billion fine is not going to go through. That is good. That will drive profit up at Qualcomm. That's a good story. Okay, Qualcomm could be interesting. Neo commenced deliveries. Okay, Neo's very good at announcing the fact that they've got to work this morning. Yeah, that's a non-story. Tesla, lithium, that's good. They're locking in supply. Musk thinks that 80% of cars will be electric. No shortage of raw materials. Another Tesla factory. There's quite a good set of stories for Tesla. That could be interesting. Walmart offers to buy 49%. A company worth 79 million. Am I missing a digit? No, I checked this one over 5 times. It's got non-story. XOM agreed to sell its shale gas. I briefly covered it earlier. So I mean, that's the way I'm trying to think through that. I'm trying to say, okay, well, that's what the story said. Obviously, I've had to cull back the amount of words to get the core of the story into a few words. If you want to look up more, then you need to look it up yourself. I'm trying to look for stuff which is going to drive profit. So that's either pushing sales up or down, pushing costs up or down, or pushing the other costs, typically, which is going to be tax, interest, amortization, goodwill, those types of things. As different stories into the future push those triggers. Obviously, as profits move up and down, valuations move up and down, and price moves with the valuation. So that's the core of what I'm looking for, is the stuff that's really going to move a company. So when Palantir comes out and says they've had a contract for $3 million with the US military, that's quite exciting. If Amazon came out and said the same, it wouldn't be very exciting because it's neither here nor there to Amazon's over the ratio. So in my head, I'm just trying to gauge, okay, what's the relativity of these stories? And then I circle back with those general stock news considerations. Okay, now let's go back to the general market. Papa Powell has screwed the economy and saying basically we're taking you all down, you're all going to die and it's going to be shit. Um, but equally, the market does regularly price these things in relatively quickly. So potentially they've already priced it all in on Friday. So this could be a bounce day. It's very negative. The general market commentary is woe is me and this is all going to shit. Um, and you read, I almost put different um, news sources into different brackets. So the better an article is written, Seeking Alpha is the worst of these, do exactly the opposite. So if they say buy Apple because, and they set out really carefully, they're aiming at the general market and basically they want their money. So yeah, do the opposite. If you're reading in between the lines and it's really not clear, I mean, like with that nuclear example of CCJ, I'm not saying it will go. I would never say that, but it goes onto the watch list purely because it's like, yeah, people haven't seen this yet, and this is subtle manipulation to get it to go, as opposed to overt manipulation to steal people's money. Um, that's the general thought process I'm going through to try and determine what actually is going to work and what is not. Um, I'm still going to hold the question about keywords, but in terms of where I am now, in terms of discussing the Oracle, do we have any more questions?
Yeah. Do you also take the nuclear plant open news in consideration with compared with Tesla and Neo?
I can see your linkage. I mean, in the UK, there's an article that came out over the weekend to say that the average cost of electricity is going up effectively fourfold over the past, well, over a 24-month period. So as electricity goes up, well, the cost of running an EV goes up, and that's bad. Whereas you bring in nuclear and it brings down the average cost of the electricity, then that's probably good. I would see that as being a candle on top of the icing on top of the cake, rather than a part of the cake fundamentally. It may support the move, but I would see it as being too distant to justify the two. I mean, that will be two separate stories to consider. So Lee, I think, could be interesting. CCJ could be interesting. XOM could be interesting, and QCon could be interesting. Those are probably CLF as well. Those are probably my feels for today. I mean, reading the other news, energy generally seems to be in play, whereas travel does not seem to be in play. I can't recall a single article apart from two Air France pilots having a fight and getting fired for it, which is not hugely relevant. Um, so it's almost trying to choose, okay, which sectors are going to go into play. Lee could pull in the overall EV with Tesla. Energy is certainly in play, maybe commodities, tech's always in play. But if I mean, sort of looking at banks, unlikely, retail, unlikely, travel, as I said, healthcare, unlikely, gambling, unlikely. So I'm trying to sort of figure out, okay, what's going to be a mover today. Whereas sometimes you jump into Bank of America and it moves 6 cents all day, and other times you jump in, it's got $2 all day because the sector's going into play because there's so many people talking about that particular sector. Now, it may be talking about banks generally, or it might be talking about interest rates moving. So that's where I'm trying to look. Okay, which sectors are looking interesting today?
Okay, perfect. So EVs can also be in play if you look at this news, like
Yeah,
the whole EV sector.
I think the more EVs are being talked about, the more people are going to be looking at the other EVs as well. You're going to get sympathy plays rolling at the same time. If you've got a single story about Abbott, and there is some stories about AZN on the broker side. There's some stuff about Moderna launching some products. There's some stuff about Pfizer doing some stuff, but in half done. I mean, Moderna's Omicron targeting booster COVID-19 vaccine gets clearance in Switzerland. That's one of the other stories that are out now going. I don't even understand how that could be relevant. No, I'm not putting that on. Go away. Um, so that's some of the editing that I have to do to keep it to the 2 page max. But it just doesn't feel as if healthcare will be played. Lead, that sounds like a very big story because of the power shortage element, because of production hiccup. Tesla on the other side is sounding positive. I am not saying one is positive. I'm not saying one is negative. I'm saying that these are catalysts that make people flush out their expectations of what they think will happen as a general market. And sometimes an obviously positive story will end up being negative because it's buy the rumor, sell the news.
And most likely it will bring in volume,
Yeah,
so
that's
clearer
the
price
point. I mean,
action.
a story is there to catalyze volume, and then the volume will determine which way the price is going to go.
Yeah, so sometimes you got good news and it's still a sell off for the day.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think the aspect of let's see, good example. Peloton last week announcing the fact that it's done the deal with Amazon. That was new news. It sort of, no one had projected it sort of going in, etc., etc. So it was, oh, that's going to drive their sales. That's going to be good for their profit. Their profits are going to go up. The share price is going to go up. This is running. The next day, they announced their results, and it's not running. The sales are down, but actually, which way the price is going to go now, who knows? Walmart saying that they are going to massively discount their inventory, and the share price crashes, and 2 weeks later it's back up to where it was. So that you sold you sold the rumor, which is the first time you've heard the news, and then the news slowly comes through and it's going, actually, this isn't half as bad as we actually expected, and so it comes back over time. So I think it's very difficult to say it is a good piece of news. A good new piece of news is probably the best of them, or good. So anything that's brand new that you haven't heard before, whether it be a rumor that Amazon's going to buy Electronic Arts, um, and then someone at CNBC says, "I know someone in Amazon, and they would never do that," and therefore it crashes back down again. And go, who do you know in Amazon? I don't know. Someone in the store. He did my iPhone. Fantastic. That's not relevant. So I think it's always trying to gauge who's saying what justification do they have for saying what they're saying. Um, if you see that there's been a board change, um, if it's an unexpected CEO change, that's going to be relevant. If it's an expected retirement of the chairman, that's not going to be relevant. If it's a rollover of a CFO, okay, have they had audit issues? Is that what's driving this? Are they disappearing before they were expected to go? Likely irrelevant. They've got a new marketing head and head of production and worldwide sales. Okay, that's going to push revenues. Um, so it's all trying to figure out, is this likely? Is this interesting? Is this going to be a generic person on the street in an institution saying, "I hadn't realised that, and that's going to push this"? That's really what you're looking for when you're reading the news, in my mind. And sometimes you'll read something and it doesn't do anything. Um, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So a lot of the times you look at the stock news, look at the ticker, what is the news, and after that you look at the chart and the volume if the price is already
Correct. Correct.
priced in.
So at the moment, my list is probably CCJ, CLF, LI, QCOM, XOM. So that then goes onto my short list, and then I start looking at, okay, so now let's have a look at um, the daily chart over the previous month and see what reaction this has had against the pivots on there. What's the volumes looking like? Is this looking strong or weak on there? What's the volumes been looking like recently? To try and narrow it down of which ones are going to go onto my final main list. And then I sit there and go, Carlos, shut up, shut up, shut up, don't mention it. And that's not being negative to Carlos. it's very much me saying I want stuff that is clean going into the market open. If it's had enough volume to be interesting to Carlos, it's not Carlos I'm reflecting on. I'm reflecting on all of the pre-market shows, and BBT is one of them, but there's hundreds of them. And everyone's seeing the same data. So I want stuff that is lurking in the background that no one's paying attention to. So when it opens, everyone then says, okay, now we've got full capacity to actually go where we want to go. And if we're at R4, it's just like, please go through, come back, retest R4, and then off we go to the races. Thank you very much. We're outside R4, R6 not relevant. We're going for the floors. That would be the perfect trade for me. Because Carlos hasn't mentioned it, the reason why Carlos mentioning it is relevant is you're going to have a whole load of people that are relatively new to markets that are not clear whether this is long or short. And so they some buy and then some sell and then some buy and then some sell, and that's called chop. And I hate chop. So this is my way to avoid chop. But equally, the ones that are relevant, so PDD today, I think probably be the most relevant on our list. Yep, 2.75 million traded so far. That's going to be on Carlos's list because it's choppy. It's got price action. It's got earnings. Nothing's happened. But other days, you'll have APA. This is probably 2 weeks back that had earnings. It had 19,000 traded in the pre-market, and it did a perfect R4 retest, and off it went. Thank you very much. Moved $3-4. It's going, wow, that worked. So it's not about saying earnings are bad. It's about, okay, here's a catalyst that might make it interesting to people. Now let's see what actually happens in the pre-market. Let's see what the monthlies are looking at. Let's see where it positions in the chart. Um, does it have sufficient volume on previous days? That's the reason why we choose the ticker list that we have, because we're trying to choose ones which are going to move. What's the bid-ask spread looking like? That's something I can't tell in advance because it varies day to day. But there are some which have a ridiculous bid-ask spread, and I hate them. And that's the reason why it's a matter of culling it down to a small little group. And I typically only watch 4 tickers for the day.
So you only trade stocks based on news.
I try to. Until 10:30 New York, yes, only news. After 10:30, I start paying more attention to Gazoo's alerts because I'm trading. And realistically, I stop looking at the news at about 8:30 because I enjoy chatting to you guys. Um, so I miss some of the stories that come in between 8:30 and 9:30. So Piton's news about Amazon last week came in, I think, at 8:45. And as a result, I missed that. I didn't see what was going on. It was relatively easy to check it and find it, but I'm not watching for it in the same way. So after about 10:30, there's still going to be other stories that come out, but I'm not going to track every single one of them because I'm then into trading mode rather than in research mode. And then I will be looking more for what alerts kick off and then playing it more from a pivot and alert perspective rather than news perspective.
So in the pre-market, is there a certain amount? I guess I have a kind of a twofold question.
Hmm.
So in the pre-market, you want a stock to not have a lot of volume traded, just because that's, like you said, a bunch of people are going to get in on it. And then second, these stocks that don't have a lot of volume in the pre, how how quickly do they move when it opens? I mean, are they
Okay,
usually pretty slow or?
it varies ticker to ticker. If it's Intel, it's going to move slowly. If
Okay.
it's Tesla, it's going to move quickly. If it's AMC, it's going to either do absolutely nothing or it's going to go ballistic. Um, it, the list that we are we work to is, as I said, it's about 177 tickers long. It's on the watch list, I think, watch list mark. And about once every 4 to 6 weeks, we go through it and just say, okay, what's going to disappear? So typically, if anything's below $10, Gazoo doesn't like it. Below $5, I agree with him. But somewhere between the two, it's the case if it's gone below five, it's never going to make it back. None of us, Thor doesn't like trading anything below 10, and that's the reason why I said, okay, if it's below five, it's gone. So we've got Space and Bausch Health, which are going to be disappearing in the next couple of days. then we look at, okay, so since we started the alerts back in March, who have not had an alert? So Alaska Airlines, ALK, has never had an alert on it. It trades relatively well, but it's more an investing stock than it is a trading stock. Um, so that's the second group that gets culled off. And then I sit there and I go through earnings whispers, and I go through the next 3 months and I say, okay, let's look at all the tickers that are out there and see which ones we've heard of, which ones has Carlos been going through. I'll take a list of about 200 of those, then I'll go back to Carlos's list. So I've kept a record of all of Carlos's watch lists since 1st of June last year. See how many times they've appeared on Carlos's list. Not because, I mean, Carlos's list is great for two reasons. One, avoid the chop. Two, does it trade well? If it trades well on an average day, but without the chop, it's a thing. I mean, AMD, when it doesn't have the chop in the morning, is a lovely thing to trade. But if it has the chop in the morning, you're going to get your ass bitten. And I don't enjoy that. That's the reason. So it's the chop factor and the quality of the trading. So that then cuts down the list further. Then I go into the charts and say, okay, what's the average volume that we've had? If it's not 1.5 million, I'm not interested. If we don't have decent price movement, it's only moving by $3 a day on a $150 stock. It's just like, sod that. If it's not respecting the pivots over the past 3 weeks, sod that. It's not our type of ticker. And so the list at the moment, I think we've got 17 additional tickers which are under consideration. And then that goes onto the list. So coming through to the question of what's the price action look like? Well, in the pre-market, hopefully really bad. But as soon as it opens up, average trading volume in the day, it's over 1 million, guys. It's going to have volume once the market opens. And if it doesn't, then use your R-fold indicator. Say, yeah, he was wrong. That's the reason why you have multiple things on the watch list.
And one more question about the expected ranges. Do you like keep this in the back of your head to know if the price is at an overextension, or do you trade off of these levels?
I look at the price. Once I've finalized my watch list, I have a separate piece of paper of what's the expected range and what's the max pain level if it's a Friday, with a view of saying, oh, it's coming into that price level. This might be relevant, it might not be. I don't know. I'm not going to set a pivot at that number because it's a number. If it happens to be monthly S4 as well, so oh yeah, I'm setting a partial at that level because there's so many things contributing to say that it's not going to be a great day's trading.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the low of the expected range, is that max pain, or is that something different?
Completely different. So the expected range, I'm not sure if you've got Think or Swim, but if you analyze, go to the Analyze tab, or you watch Jared on a Monday morning, you'll see him do exactly this. He goes and says, okay, the close on Friday was this. On the option chain, today, this weekend, and I'm looking at option chain closing on the 9th of September. So ironically, at the moment, I've got Tesla open. The close on the weekend, obviously the pre-market has moved it now, so let's go to that. So the close, I think, I've got this right. The close on the weekend was 288.09. The plus or minus on the option chain is 23.535. So it's then 288.09 plus 23.535 and minus 23.535. There's your expected range.
Okay, perfect.
The final question that was mentioned was keywords. Keywords is a really difficult one to answer. I mean, acquisition, phase 3, CEO resigns. There's a series of them that, yes, they can be relevant. I think if you had, there was a keyword list that was put up by Gazoo on the Daily Oracle about a month ago, and you find them on Google relatively easily. I don't typically use it, but then I've been in the financial markets 30 years. And as a result, it's more ingrained into me about what is likely to be relevant today. But 30 years experience, I'm still regularly wrong. The nature of the beast. I mean, if you could predict it, you wouldn't need to do any of this because you've already made billions. So it's probability based and saying, okay, what is likely to be relevant today? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Okay, clear.
Okay.
Actually, what is an acquisition? Because I heard it multiple times, or I see it
An
multiple times.
acquisition is when one company buys another.
Okay.
So you have an acquisition. So if Amazon buys Electronic Arts, Amazon will be acquiring Electronic Arts. If AT&T takes its Discovery division and does a deal with Warner Brothers to merge its Discovery element into it, that's a merger. So you typically see investment bankers, I'm in M&A, which is mergers and acquisitions.
And is it most of the time positive news for the company that does the acquisition, and negative news for the company that's being bought?
Ironically, the exact opposite.
Okay.
What you're looking for is when someone buys something, they're typically buying it because the underlying company is doing well. And if it's doing well, you're going to have to pay through the nose to get it. Which means the fact that probably for the first few years, it is going to impact your profitability because you're going to have to pay back the loans you took out to buy that company. And it's not generating enough profit to actually cover those loans. Over time, you pay off those loans, and then the profit starts rolling through. So what you're looking for is it earnings accretive? Which basically says, okay, yeah, I took $1 billion in, and I'm paying 100 million a year in interest for that, so I'm down 100. But I just bought something; it's earning me 150, so I'm net. I'm up 50. That is earnings accretive. Most of them are earnings dilutive. That you've got your 100 million of extra interest, but it's only earning you 50. So that's the reason why, depending on the price that you pay for something. I mean, if someone says, "Here's a bar of gold," and it's worth 1,000, you pay 2,000 for it, your share price is going to go down. If you paid $10 for it because you got a really good deal, then your share price is going to go up. But ordinarily, you pay higher.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions? Cool.
From my side.
Right, I'm going to wrap this off and just do a quick check through to see what other news has come in so I can do the final version. Hope this has been useful. But by all means, if you've got other questions, pop me a message, give me a shout. I'll see what I can do to help.
It's been very helpful.
Thank you so much, Hamish.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
It was really helpful. Thank you for your time.
Welcome. Take care.
Thanks, you too.